Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Coin Lady channel. With the release of the Hinman documents today, there is plenty to discuss. Therefore, as it concerns varied elements of the Hinman report. As a result, it's brand new content with very little redundancy. But here's what I must tell you. At first, Bill Hinman denied that the physical assets were securities. Then a suggestion was made that could change things so that assets weren't technically considered securities at all times. However, there is a small disclaimer. But let me tell you, even with that exception, which I'll show you in this video, it's actually still 100% undeniably in line with what Attorney John Deaton and the rest of us here in the XRP community have been pointing out for years. We are arguing today specifically for their position in this draft because it is legal. Now, however, they argue that the SEC is not functioning in faithful obedience to the law, a word that has gained notoriety in the community ever since Judge Netburn used it to describe the agency's behavior. Okay, got it. I'd want to share some thoughts from Paul Grewal, Coinbase Chief Legal Officer. Here's what John Deaton had to say about it. And also, Bill Morgan. Yes, you got that correctly. This is going to be so frustrating because I just got some stuff out of the library. But listen, I've maintained for a long time that the judge made a terrible decision in the library case. And if you compare what the SEC is saying internally with what they argued in court and fooled the judge into thinking, you'll see that the former is closer to the truth. Just, wow, it's incredible. It is possible to fool the judge. Justices have flaws just like everyone else. These people are just like you and me. The judge's decision in this case is particularly poor. In all candor and amongst themselves, the SEC is aware of this fact. However, their only goal is to achieve victory. And it stinks to high heaven. I do want to clarify something before I go any further. I come from no financial or legal background. Do not buy or sell anything based on anything I say or write. I am not a licensed attorney or financial advisor. For fun and as a pastime, I enjoy making videos about crypto-related topics to share on YouTube. That's okay. Therefore, XRP community member and attorney Bill Morgan says as follows: it is increasingly typical for individuals who support the SEC's vast overreach to concur with its statement that the crypto token itself is a security. The SEC did not feel that way in June of 2018. An early version of the speech is excerpted here. Make it full screen, please. An early version of the speech is included here. According to Billy Boy Hinman's Ethereum rant, strictly speaking, the token or currency is whatever the digital information packet is called. Like Hawaii's orange groves, it's not a security if it's on its own. However, depending on the context of the sale and the reasonable expectations of buyers, the token, coin, or orange tree might or might not be offered and sold as a security. Oh, praise the Lord! Could it have been written by John Deaton? Surely John Deaton didn't pen that, right? That's because that's what he's been saying the whole time. The draft even had that detail. They grasped the idea immediately. That was a fact recognized by them. Technically speaking, you could parse this out even further, and perhaps the XRP community as a whole could be more specific in our terminology. Also, language is a messy thing, and we should strive to get as near to it as possible. That said, you could get even more specific if you wanted to add some asterisks to what the rest of us and I have already said. To keep explaining that and then adding but asterisks this every time the subject is brought up might grow tedious. But the following is something else Bill Morgan wrote that explains why I say that. Here's a remark on that, by the way. The change was necessary due to the fact that by definition some objects, such as stock, are securities. It was also acknowledged that tokenizing a security, like a share, would be an exception. Here is the full text of the on-screen quote. We suggest this edit because there are things that we would say are securities all by themselves, where things refers to items included in the Securities or Exchange Act definition. Another plausible scenario involves the issuance of a token in place of a physical share of stock. That's the one time when a piece of code by itself wouldn't provide protection. The safety is not in the code itself. But, however, what exactly are they discussing here? This is a continuation of a train of thought that I touched on briefly in my last video. I'm sorry if my response was clumsy because of the urgency of the situation. However, I'd like to take this opportunity to set the record straight about the truth of the matter. And I did say that some things were included in the list because they were securities by definition. And that's why I think our language perhaps could use some refinement. However, our counterarguments are as follows. So it's not like we need to tweak our arguments. Valid points are made. I mean in terms of how we express them, and certainly there is room for improvement in the limitations of the English language. All okay then. However, the points being made remain unharmed. John Deaton, myself, and the entirety of the local community have been advocating for this for eons. Here then are the matters. So, I went ahead and entered it. I looked up the safety measures online. The Securities or Exchange Act definition was what they were looking for, and it was the first result. You can find it on many different places, including Cornell Law School's website. Note stocks, treasury shares, securities, future security-based swap bonds, and debentures are all included in the definition of security, which I have underlined for your convenience. And it keeps on going. I don't have to finish reading it. You can see it right now. What they're essentially saying is that, if they are these things, then they must also be that. Consider that to be a security. Therefore, technically, we may narrow the focus. However, we have made this clear, including by providing examples such as the one displayed above. That's why I yanked it up. Several times on my channel, I've mentioned this. In other words, it's not in the list provided. If we are to achieve greater specificity and nuance. So, assets themselves are never the security. They are both communicating the same idea. What they're saying today is complete nonsense, but they know it because it's the same nonsense we've been hearing from the community. So, Bill Morgan put pen to paper. According to what the SEC staff believed to be the official stance, quote, to the rule that the bit of code itself is not a security, end quote. Tokens themselves are not considered securities, according to SEC employees. That settles it. Even after all that, it's still there. So, count me as Darren, and put me at the tail end. So, I reposted that thread from Morgan, where they said the SEC once held the view that tokens themselves are never the security. The SEC is a low organization. And this morning, Attorney Morgan emailed me to praise me for the edit, saying that it was one thing that Hinman got right. I'm too exhausted to bother trying to track down the person who made that suggestion. Time to make the edit, 142. Here. In addition, there is this. Mitchell retweeted the thread, and Bill Morgan replied, I don't know. Mitchell. What more definitive proof do you need that the token itself is not a security than a rule from the SEC? In light of this information and the applicable legislation, why would a judge even consider the token itself to be a security? Exactly. Let us return briefly to this impressive list produced by Cornell Law School. The number of websites listed that provide this information is ridiculous. A definition found in the Securities Exchange Act. That's what I've heard it called, at least. Right? Equities or the stock market. Yes. What the Securities and Exchange Act means. A quick search on Google will reveal numerous references to this. I'd like to emphasize that everything discussed below is, by definition, a security. There is no mention of a digital asset or cryptocurrency. There is nothing of the type inside. The token is missing. That's just not how it works. The idea is that anything not included in this definition is not a security. Wrath of Kahneman, a member of the XRP community, has contributed the following. The secondary XRP market is going to benefit, he argues. In an email, the SEC's General Counsel outlined suggested revisions to how the agency determines whether or not a cryptocurrency is an investment contract, noting that in Howey, the purchase of land was only considered a security if it also included a service contract, rather than the property itself. Here is a screenshot of the pertinent area, please have a look. Regarding the use of Howey for crypto assets, the OC issued a remark on the topic on June 12. Land and service contracts are the only types of purchases that can be considered security purchases. Those who had only purchased land could not be considered investors. There you have it once more. The land itself is not what would be used as collateral. It goes hand in hand with a maintenance agreement. One alternative is to consider the bigger picture of events. What makes an asset a security is not the asset itself. Obviously not. A response from them can be found here. According to Paul Grewal, Coinbase's chief legal officer, the regulatory gap evidenced by the Hinman emails demonstrates what Coinbase has been saying to the Third Circuit, Congress, and the SEC, that the securities laws are incomplete with respect to digital assets, that securities laws are not intended to rule over all digital assets, and that many digital assets are not securities. And he also attached a screenshot. For the purposes of this video, reading it is unnecessary. However, the SEC did get the gist of the situation. There is still a regulatory void in 2018. There is a lack of clarity in the regulations. I wonder what Kim John Gensler has to say today. Oh, I suppose that explains it all. The only thing I need to do now is check in and fill out some paperwork. We're going to be inseparable. Get some smoothies and hang out. No, you little, that is not the case at all. John Deaton retweeted this and said the Hinman emails support Coinbase and Ripple's fair notice argument. It remains to be seen how useful this will be in a court of law. The emails, however, should help bring the SEC's hypocrisy and recklessness to the attention of the public and lawmakers. This provides Dragon Chain and other 20 tokens with a defense that is, perhaps, even stronger than Ripple's in terms of fair notice. We shall soon discover its results. However, the SEC is obviously not doing so in good faith. More proof, and it's completely revolting. I said this right at the beginning of the video, and I stand by it even after the judgment was issued in November. The library took a back seat. The judge's decision was disastrous and wrong under the law. The library closed, too. Simply put, decentralization is what makes cryptocurrencies possible. There is no single ruling body. Okay, so it's true. However, the library as a whole will soon disappear. If they aren't technically out of business right now, they've said as much. As a result, they can't afford to fight back and file appeals if they lose at trial. The fight, which was terrible, has now ended. Now, then, the library's official word. Specifically, in the SEC against the library. With no public comments required, SEC successfully argued that token sales qualify as securities. Judgment excerpted below. Meanwhile, the Office of General Counsel at the SEC has declared behind closed doors that this consideration is legally immaterial. This, friends, is the truly revolting part. This means that you can build a cryptocurrency without announcing it to the world. The object is made, and then it appears in the world. From a legal standpoint, that's enough to hold you responsible. That's all by virtue of the fact that you made no claims. The anticipation of gain would persist. Right. The Howey test, if you will. In the library case, the SEC argued successfully that it was sufficient for the library to merely hold the holdings, without making any public declarations. That's what the SEC claimed, and they won the argument. The judge ruled as such, after all. Just give me a second and I'll demonstrate. However, the SEC's Office of General Counsel has said behind closed doors that such considerations are not applicable under the law. These folks are the lowest of the low. The judge's decision is presented below. This decision is official as of November 2022. And this indicates, for the record, that they successfully fooled the judge. The judge was easily duped by their arguments. The judge's ruling is included below. However, even if libraries never mentioned it, any reasonably informed buyer of LBC would know that the tokens being given were investment potential. The fact that library kept hundreds of millions of LBC for itself shows that the company is committed to increasing the worth of the LBC blockchain for its own benefit and the benefit of everybody who buys LBC. A buyer with common sense would recognize this structure and conclude that they, too, will benefit from their investment in LBC. Since libraries worked so hard on it, the judge ruled as such. The judge admitted to being fooled by this argument. The SEC's own lawyers didn't buy the judge's reasoning here. Isn't that utterly odious? I mean, seriously? How ridiculous. You mean the SEC argued a matter they internally considered was immaterial and tricked the judge into concluding it was relevant? Attorney Bill Morgan, Twitter from the library. There were many reasons why the verdict was so terrible. Some of the justifications are not even legally solid, let alone reasonable. Dead on. Morgan, attorney. Here, John Dean's crypto group retweets it from a library with the following commentary. It was crucial to unseal the documents that the SEC had battled so hard to protect from the public and other claimants. There is little doubt that the SEC under Jay Clayton and Gary Gensler is acting in bad faith with respect to crypto legislation. In any case, there we are. That's why it's so vile, because of that. It's this. I was anticipating the presence of content, but it's also I can't say. This is all pretty new to the community, and I haven't reviewed it all yet. So, here we are, still in the waiting phase. And I'm going to cover as much of this as I possibly can. Excuse me, folks, but perhaps the most surprising thing I've found so far is that the SEC itself in 2018 was making the arguments and having the understanding that John Deaton is articulating today with regard to the asset itself, not being a security, unless you're talking about something that meets the definition listed here on this web page yet again. I'm going to make one final appearance at Cornell Law School. This is the case I've been making, and one that John Deaton has been making as well. All of us included, and the SEC is aware of it. That makes my stomach feel like it's on fire. These people are the definition of lowlifes. What a horrible organization. Obviously, I can't provide you financial advice. My words here should not be used as a basis for making any financial transactions. And please like and subscribe my channel. See you in the next video. Bye.